this episode, today, what I want to talk about is assimilation. And when I say that, I'm not talking about the version that we are taught. It's not the idea of fitting in or even becoming part of something, but the version many of us have actually lived. So the version where assimilation is not a choice, it's a strategy. It's a survival mechanism. It's a negotiation between who you are and who a system allows you to be. I want to start with where this begins for me, like my journey, my reflection, right? Because I think that's important. When I have guests, it's about the guests. And today really is about, I just want to share a little bit of my insight. And hopefully, I always hope that people can walk away with something more than what they started before listening today. So for me, again, I wanted to start with where it begins, right? This personal entry point for me about what does it mean or when we talk about assimilation. And for those of you who may not know, I grew up, or I am, first generation Puerto Rican or Boricua American in Boston, Massachusetts. In the neighborhood, I was raised in a neighborhood called the South End, and specifically the cathedral projects of the South End. It was definitely a community made up of Black, Latinx, and white families, all living within the same block, like a city block. But not all of us really experienced the same access, right? So even as a child, I knew something. I knew that I didn't have the language for it yet, but I knew it. Like my skin tone allowed me to access spaces that weren't equally available to others in my own family, and friends and loved ones. That awareness stays with you. And at least it stayed with me my entire career because it teaches us, or it taught me early, that identity, it's not just who you are, it's how you are perceived and how you are actually positioned. I think so when we talk about assimilation, right, I feel we have to move beyond the surface definition. Sure, assimilation isn't just adapting. It's performing. It's constantly asking yourself, how do I speak here? Like, what version of myself is acceptable in this space that I'm in? What do I need to hide to be seen as a professional or as safe or even qualified? And for many first-generation Americans, this starts pretty early. We see it in language. Our accents change, like what becomes our norm aligns with dominant culture. We see it in names. And what I mean by that, Jose, like a name like Jose or Jose becomes John, or Carmen becomes Caroline, right? Or Maria becomes Marie. And these aren't small changes. They are actually signals. And I think for me, these are more importantly signals that say proximity to dominant culture increases your chance of belonging into something beyond just ourselves. But it really doesn't stop there, right? Assimilation to me moves into everything. Think about what we eat. Think about how we dress, like how we carry ourselves, from arroz con pollo to McDonald's, right? From coquito to eggnog. And at the same time, like the very culture asking us to assimilate is consuming everything we bring. Our music, our style, our art, but not us. So think about that, right? So, and this is where I feel that most of us should pause and name something critical. Because what people often experience as individual pressure is actually a structural design in environments where really there is no intentional support for identity, belonging, and equity. It's what I refer to as systemic equity infrastructure, where people are left to figure it out on their own. And what happens in the absence of that structure, you may ask? Well, assimilation fills the gap. Not because people want to lose themselves, but because the system rewards conformity and penalizes differences. So for my culture, gente, my Boricuas, right? My Borincans, like from the island of Puerto Rico, like for Puerto Rican communities, like this conversation cannot exist without history. So we're talking about over 500 years of colonization. We're talking about military occupation, environmental harm in the places like Vieques, where it forced sterilization of my sisters, right? The Boricuas women, the female Boricuas, right? So Puerto Rican women, political and economic control, really control to serve the U.S. or the United States military. But we cannot vote for the president, those of us who actually live on the island. Like we live on the land, but we don't fully control it. So assimilation here, it's not neutral. It's political. So, and then there's what happens within communities where, for example, Puerto Rican identity is complex. Right? And what do I mean by that? Well, it's not as clear as what you see. It's what lies below the surface, what runs through our veins and our blood, right? And what runs through them is African, Spanish, and Taino roots. So it's a full spectrum of skin tones. And yet, colonial systems have always relied on division, as in proximity to whiteness. And this becomes currency. So, as a result, hierarchy becomes normalized. In assimilation, well, it becomes what most people are familiar with was the story of the Trojan horse, right? So assimilation becomes all of a sudden that Trojan horse that we heard about in Donna and Troy and the Iliad and the Odyssey books. It looks like opportunity. It feels like progress, but it reinforces the same systems that divide us to begin with. So we're told assimilation creates belonging, but what kind of belonging requires you to silence parts of yourself? Another question that I hope you would ask yourself and your community is what kind of community is only accessible through performance? Like even language becomes controlled. How many times have we heard speak English, right? As if English were ever the original language of this land. So here's what I want to leave you with. First-generation Americans exist because of sacrifice, because someone before us made it possible for us to be here. And assimilation should never require the abandonment of that inheritance. Because when we assimilate without question, we don't just lose culture, we lose memory, we lose history. We lose part of ourselves. And maybe the question isn't, how do we assimilate better? Maybe the question is, what systems are participating in that require assimilation in the first place? I want to say quickly, thank you for being part of this conversation today. And this is Conversation Café, where we don't just talk about leadership, we actually examine the systems that shape it. So I hope today, again, you walk away with something more than what you started prior to even hitting play for this episode. Please remember to hit subscribe to hear our next episodes, hit thumbs up or like, and kind of share our resources and our content. I think what we want to do is really try to build a community, and we can't do this without you. So please share this episode with a friend if you think they need to hear it, or share this episode with your team if they think that, if we want to have a conversation about assimilation at our workplace, let's start with understanding assimilation. So, bastante gracias. You can follow us across social platforms, obviously on LinkedIn. Please follow us for our episodes that drop on YouTube at this point and Spotify. So when you get an opportunity, again, remember to click like, hit subscribe, and I look forward for you and all of us to create community together through this different type of engagement called Conversation Café. Until then, adios, take care, and please be safe out there. Gracias.